The sun sagged low over the horizon, turning the sky into a smear of orange and blood red. The highway shimmered with heat, its silence broken only by the growl of approaching engines. One by one, the bikes rolled in, chrome gleaming beneath the dying light, until they came to a stop in front of Rosie's Diner, the only place open for 50 miles. The sign buzzed weakly, casting pale light over the row of machines and the rough men who rode them. The steel horses weren't known for being gentle, but they had rules, unwritten laws that meant something out here where law didn't reach. Tank, the leader, sat on his bike a moment longer, watching the sunset. His beard was streaked with gray, eyes hidden behind dark lenses that had seen too much. He'd been through wars, bar fights, and more miles than he could count, but something about that evening felt unsettled. He swung his leg over the seat, stretching as he stepped toward the diner door. The others followed, boots crunching gravel, the air thick with dust and the smell of gasoline. Just as Tank reached for the door handle, a high, thin cry split the stillness. Everyone froze. It wasn't the kind of sound you could ignore. It was sharp, desperate, filled with something that made grown men flinch. From behind the gas pumps, a little girl stumbled out, her small frame trembling, feet bare and bleeding from running. Her hair was tangled, dress torn at the shoulder, a filthy teddy bear hanging from one arm. "Help," she sobbed, voice cracking. "Please, somebody help." Tank crouched down immediately, his shadow falling over her. "Easy now, kid," he said, his deep voice gentle but firm. "What happened?" They're hurting her," she gasped between sobs, clutching the teddy bear so tightly it looked like it might tear apart. "They're beating my mama." A silence fell over the group. Even the rumble of cooling engines seemed to fade away. Tank's eyes hardened, the air around him shifting from calm to lethal in an instant. "Who?" he asked quietly. "My stepdad and his friends," she whispered, tears streaking her cheeks. "They been drinking all day. Mama told me to run when he threw a bottle. He locked the door and," her voice broke, "he's gonna kill her." Riggs, the youngest in the crew, clenched his fists. "That's it, we go." Tank looked at the others, a silent agreement passed between them like a spark. He pulled off his leather jacket and wrapped it around the trembling girl. It dwarfed her completely, but she clung to it as if it was armor. "You did good, sweetheart," Tank said, his tone softer now. "You got out. Now you let us handle the rest, all right?" She nodded through tears, still hiccuping from crying. Rosie, the diner's owner, hurried out, her face pale. "Tank, what's going on?" "Keep her safe," Tank said simply, lifting his helmet. "We'll be back." The engines came alive again, one by one, the roar filling the open plain. Rosie held the girl close as she watched the men vanish down the road, a trail of dust following them into the fading light. At the trailer park a mile away, the sound of shouting carried through the air. Tank killed his engine first, motioning for silence. The smell of cheap whiskey and fear drifted from a rusted trailer, its windows glowing dimly from inside. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate, boots crunching softly on gravel. Through the cracked blinds, he saw the girl's mother, slumped against a wall, bruised, eyes swollen, hands raised to shield herself. A man stood over her, belt in hand, while two others laughed from a couch. Tank's jaw tightened. Without a word, he drew back his boot and kicked the door clean off its hinges. The metal screamed. The man turned just in time to see Tank's fist coming. It connected with a wet crack. Blood sprayed. Chaos erupted. Within seconds, the bikers were inside, their fury unleashed. The trailer shook from the violence. Fists, shouts, the sound of men hitting walls. And then, silence. Tank stood breathing hard, looking down at the wreckage. The woman lay trembling but alive. He knelt beside her, his voice low. "It's over, ma'am. You're safe now." She looked up at him through tears, lips split and eyes wide. "My little girl, she's safe," he said softly. "She's waitin' for you." And for a long moment, the old biker held her steady, while outside, the last light of the day died quietly behind them. The diner lights flickered against the deepening night, their pale glow spilling onto the cracked asphalt. Rosie stood at the door, holding the trembling little girl close as the low thunder of engines rolled across the highway again. The sound grew louder, steadier, until headlights pierced the darkness, a line of bikes, returning through the dust. The girl's eyes widened, hope trembling across her small, tear-streaked face. "There," Rosie whispered, hand on her shoulder. "They're back, honey." The bikes stopped in a neat row, engines cutting off one by one until only the whisper of the wind remained. Tank swung off his Harley, his boots hitting the ground heavy and sure. His knuckles were raw, blood crusted along the edges, but his eyes, usually cold and distant, were softer now. Behind him, Riggs helped a woman down from the back of a truck. She moved slowly, her body weak, her face bruised but alive. "Mama!" The cry split the air like lightning. The little girl broke free from Rosie's arms and sprinted across the lot, bare feet slapping against the concrete. The woman dropped to her knees before her daughter reached her, arms open wide. When they collided, the sound that escaped her was half sob, half prayer. She held the girl so tightly it seemed like she'd never let go again. The bikers turned their faces away, some pretending to check their bikes, others just staring at the horizon. Tank took off his gloves, turning slightly so they could have their moment. Rosie came out carrying a blanket and a first aid kit, her eyes glassy with tears. She crouched beside the mother and daughter, wrapping the blanket around them both. "You're safe now," Rosie said softly. "You hear me, you're safe." The woman nodded weakly, her lip trembling. She looked up at Tank then, her voice barely above a whisper. "They'll come after me, he always does." Tank studied her a moment, then exhaled slowly. "Not tonight," he said. "And not ever again if they know what's good for 'em." Riggs stepped forward, resting his hand on the hilt of his knife. "You want us to make sure." Tank gave him a long, quiet look. "Already did." The others said nothing. The night was still, but there was a hum of tension underneath, something heavy and final. A few minutes later, the distant wail of sirens began to echo from the highway, slow at first, then growing closer. Rosie had called the sheriff, though Tank hadn't asked her to. She knew what kind of men they were: rough, scarred, dangerous, but not bad. There was a difference, and tonight had proved it. When the patrol cars pulled in, red and blue lights washing over the diner, the little girl clung tighter to her mother. One of the officers got out, his hand on his belt, clearly tense until he saw Tank. "Evenin', Tank," the sheriff said carefully. "Heard there was some trouble." Tank gave a curt nod. "Trailer parked down the road. 3 of 'em, still breathin', for now." The sheriff sighed. "Guess I should thank you for savin' me paperwork." He motioned for his deputies to move out, and within minutes they were gone again, lights fading down the road. Rosie handed the woman a cup of coffee and a clean towel. The girl sat beside her, wrapped up in Tank's oversized jacket, her head resting against her mother's side. The big biker lingered near his motorcycle, lighting a cigarette, the ember glowing in the dark. The girl looked up from her mother's lap, her voice small but clear. "Thank you, mister." Tank paused mid-drag, then crouched to her level. "You take care of your mama now, all right? She's got her angel back." The girl smiled faintly. "Are you an angel?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "Not even close, kid. But I know a few." He stood, tossed the cigarette into the dirt, and swung back onto his bike. One by one, the others followed suit, the engines rumbling to life again. The sound rolled over the empty fields like thunder before fading into the horizon. Rosie stood with the woman and her daughter on the diner steps, watching until the last headlight disappeared into the dark. "They're gone," the woman whispered. Rosie smiled faintly. "No, they'll always be out there somewhere. Watching the road, making sure the right folks stay safe." The little girl looked up at the sky, stars beginning to glimmer above. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't afraid. The world still felt rough, wild, and dangerous, but now she knew there were people out there, even in the darkest places, who would stop for a crying child and ride straight into hell if they had to.